You ready, Ken? Ready?
I am.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to call to order the Thursday, May 4th, 2017 Board of Adjustment meeting. Can I get a roll call, please?
Stein, absent. Dolly, absent. Arnold, absent. Shriver.
Here.
Stonebarger.
Here.
Hanson.
Here.
McGuire.
Here.
McGuire. Did you say? I'm sorry.
Not yet.
Well, no, I haven't got it. You must have beat me. Okay. Mr. Albertson.
Here.
We have a quorum.
And Dan will vote today.
Yes, Dan will vote
Okay.
today.
All right, thank you. First item on the agenda is the applicant Steve Mosier, permit number 17334, is appealing the title. Oh, I'm sorry, approval of the minutes. I need a motion and a second. Motion by Mr. Stonebarger, second by Mr. Hanson. All in favor say aye. Opposed, motion carries. Now, item number 2, applicant Steve Mosier, permit number 17334, is appealing the terms of Title 21 as it appeals to his property at 308 3rd Avenue Southwest.
Right. Basically, what the situation is here is Mr. Mosier has the property right here, and he wants to just basically take off the roof and build a second story directly above it. The reason he's here before you guys at all is because the front setback on this house is 15.7 feet off the front property line. We're supposed to be 25. So on the second story, that area is the gray area, which is done. So this is public notice. All public notices are quit. Everybody's responded, and nobody has contacted us pro or con.
Thank you. He's not encroaching any further in that setback.
Well, and no, he's not
He's
going
going
any further
straight
into
up.
the setback other than going straight up in line with what he has. So.
As we always
So
do.
if the
Oh, go
house-
ahead. Go ahead.
If the house is set back to 25 feet and you wanted to put a second floor on, that'd be no problem.
We wouldn't be here, no.
Second question is, can you pan out and take a look at the right-of-way?
Sure.
We always kind of look and go, well, how big is that right-of-way and how far is he actually from the curb? He's not. That's a fairly wide right-of-way there, isn't it?
I think it's probably a 66.
About normal?
Yeah, I think it's normal in there.
Okay.
Here we go. 80-foot right away.
Yeah, so it's pretty, and nowadays if we were to replat that today, originally we'd have a 66-foot right-of-way and he'd probably be within the setback.
And he's basically in line with the other residences. He sticks out a little farther. If it would have been set back a few feet or in line, he still wouldn't have to come here either. But so.
Okay. Thanks for that. I'll open the public hearing if anyone's here to speak on behalf or against the permit. And you did say all the cards went out and came back?
Yes, they did.
Seeing no one to speak, I'll close the public hearing, ask for a motion and a second for discussion. Motion by Mr. McGuire.
Second.
Second by Mr. Albertson. Any further discussion? Any questions for Ken? Seeing none, I'll ask for a vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Item number 3, Jason and Tricia Adams, permit number 17333. Would like to appeal the terms of Title 21 for the property at 1014 First Street Northwest in regard to a non-conforming unattached garage.
Again, application was submitted requesting construct a non-conforming 624 square foot unattached garage on a. Let the record show that Mr. Arnold has joined us. 11,328 square foot parcel located in the R1 single family residential district. Said structure is proposed to be constructed 5 foot 3 inches from the rear east property line where 9 foot is required, and 5 foot 3 inches from the south property line where 9 foot is required. Again, the applicant is requesting to build a detached garage in this area right here. Again, he wishes to be 5'3" from this property line, 5'3" from this line where 9 is required. Again, this was public notice, all public, 7 cards sent and all returned, and we had not been contacted. Well, maybe I have. Maybe I'll ask if anybody's here to ask.
Thank you. With that, I'll open the public hearing if anyone's here to speak on behalf or against the variance. There's a vacated alley back there, and you said the rear yard setback is supposed to be 9?
It would be 9, yes, in this particular case for the size of the garage, yes. Sir, if you want to speak, you need to come up here, please.
I just want to say it.
No, we're being recorded. You need to speak into the microphone and state your name.
You get to
please.
tell us who you are, too.
I'll shut up later.
My name is Bruce Bauer. I would oppose it. I think it should be built within the ordinances.
And your property is where?
1010 First Street Northwest.
Which one is that, Ken?
It would be this one here.
Right adjacent to
To the
it.
south.
South adjacent property.
And Ken, the reasoning that it's that close on that south side there, that 5.3 versus 9, that extra 3 1/3 feet is why?
Well, you have to go to the site plan basically, and he's just requesting to do that so you can have enough room to get into both stalls of the garage with his vehicles. Thank you, unless you want to say something else.
Yeah, I guess all I want to say is that's why we have ordinances, to follow them, right?
What's the lot width on this one, Ken?
This one is 96.1 feet. Tell them what you want, your name.
Jason Adams, owner of the property. Just want to be able to put a detached garage in the backyard due to medical reasons. I have medical condition where I'm probably going to be in a wheelchair in 10, 15 years. That way I can get into my house without having to get a wheelchair ramp. The front of my house is about 15 inches off the ground. I need a ramp. I don't have enough room in the current single-stall garage to ramp into the house. At least this way I can go in from the back of the house and get right into the house.
So can you zoom in on that, Ken, from a construction standpoint as to what the applicant's asking for? We've got a single stall attached garage. You put a detached garage here. Jason, can you explain where the ramp would go and why moving it over 3 feet wouldn't work?
You can use this.
Because my garage is here, is like 17 feet right here. I could drive in, put a garage here. From my deck, it's 14 inches off the ground, and then it's straight into my house from my deck. No steps or anything there, so I have room to put a ramp if I need it. Whereas from the front of my garage, it's about 18 inches, I believe. There's 2 steps, and once you get in the house, there's another step. So I won't have enough room to put a ramp and then get in the house and another ramp to get up that first step. I'm just looking in the future. You know, right now I can walk all right. I don't need a ramp right now, but when the time comes, I want to know if I'm going to be able to do it or not.
So if that garage was set back over close to 4 feet, can you point out where that ramp will go?
On the deck right now, there's stairs right here. We just make that into a ramp, and that goes right into the house.
Looking
Whereas
off the deck with the ramp run east. Let me see your clicker for a second. So would the ramp then run this way when you're done, or you can run this way when you're
no,
done?
it goes straight up and down, and then I'm at the same level as the house. And once I'm on that deck, and it's only 14 inches. Where when I go in the single stall garage, the door is right away attached to the house from the garage right in here. And so I got 2 steps right there, and then it turns into the house. I gotta go 1 more step into the house.
But to appease the neighbor to the south, if the entire garage was shifted up on the screen 4 feet, why does that not work?
We'd have to try making it work, make sure we can still drive into the garage.
To make that turn
Yep.
is the biggest reason as you come in between that 17 feet. If we slid it over another 4 feet, I can see, is the outside, the south wall of that garage kind of lined up with the concrete that comes in then?
Yep.
Well, he actually had it closer than that. His first original request was to have it down to like 3 or 4 feet off that south property line. But after he learned of the additional construction requirements for being closer than 5 feet to the property line, then he pushed it out to the 5.3 just to be safe, not to have to incur the fire protection requirements for construction.
The garage doors will face the west,
Yep.
2 doors?
Yep.
Approximately how much room is there between the house and the proposed garage?
29 feet, 28 feet right in there.
And you don't think you can move it over so it's 9 foot off the property line?
We staked it out, doing 9 and 9, and without driving back there and knocking on the fence to see if it'd work, it seemed like it was pretty tight. I don't know how well we'd be able to back up and still make that turn and back out the driveway without hitting the house, I guess, or getting too close to the house.
So to use the garage there, you'd pull in and then you back out towards that deck and then come out
Yep.
forward. That's the idea, that if you have a handicapped vehicle, you can swing that vehicle. You need that middle area there so you can swing a vehicle around.
Yes.
Thank you. Otherwise, if it was shifted to the north, you'd jog up to the top of the screen to get in, and then to make a handicap van or whatever type of vehicle it would be, there just wouldn't be enough room between there and the deck.
Correct.
So do you have to use the north parking stall? Can't you use the south parking stall?
I'd have to use the north. Because we're making the garage pretty tight. That way I could get out of the garage and wheelchair down the sidewalk on the north end of the garage to get to the ramp. I mean, there's not enough room in there to really wheelchair in the garage and out the garage doors.
But the ramp's gonna run north and south.
From that deck, yep.
Yeah, he's talking up here. It would.
Because I won't need a ramp once it gets to the house, just a ramp from the ground level to the deck.
Where's that ramp going to be, though?
Where those stairs are right there,
Yeah,
yep.
so you gonna run this way with it, or you
Yep.
gonna run like this way with it?
Have to run that way,
This way?
yep. Once the vehicle's in the garage, you got plenty of room to wheelchair around, but
Will you put that aerial picture back up?
yeah, there must have been like a trampoline or something there before
Mm-hmm.
when this picture was taken. That's about where the garage would kind of be, in that corner.
Which way is the peak? Is the peak going to run east-west or north-south?
East-west.
You intend to put rain gutters on the south side?
Yeah,
That's
both
one of the
sides.
concerns we always have is as water comes off that, we need to make sure that it doesn't flow onto, when you get closer to a lot line than normal, that the water stays on your side, doesn't run into the neighbor's side.
I believe our lot is a little bit lower right now than
Is
the
it?
neighbors.
So it stays on yours anyway.
Yep.
But the real concern is if that garage gets shifted further to the north, it's just coming between your lot line and the detached garage, or the attached garage, it doesn't really work for you.
Correct.
Futuristically, to make that turn to the north, to use that door, and then once you're in there to maneuver a vehicle in and around there to get
Yep.
turned back out in the future.
Yep.
Any other questions for Mr. Adams?
I'm still not convinced that shows undue hardship.
And Jason, you said you have a future handicap. It's MS, isn't? Am I not correct?
Yep. I've had MS now for about 15 years, and I've lost a couple jobs because of it. I've kind of stepped down from my previous employment to move back home because I couldn't do my job as good as I wanted to. Even in the wintertime, trying to go out my house door to the driveway, I got a couple steps there. My balance ain't very good, especially at the end of the day. So it makes it tricky, you know, falling down, that kind of thing's pretty common for me, especially after 4 o'clock or something like that, so.
All right, thank you. Any other questions for Mr. Adams?
Just a question, what was your concern about that? I know you said it's the ordinance, but what is the concern about under the situation that we have here with the handicap situation? I'm just curious.
Well, he stated that 8, 10 years down the road, he's gonna need this.
We don't know that for sure. He could have a relapse tomorrow and we could be in a wheelchair tomorrow.
And they don't know that for sure. He may not need it. Having a garage that close to the property line, I think lessens my property value. And I go through the whole neighborhood. I don't know if there's anything with a structure that close to any property line.
Ken, can you measure that one right behind him?
Right.
Thank you.
McCann's and then also.
About 4 feet, 4.5.
Garris's, 2 houses down
What'd you measure?
to the north.
4.5.
To the north.
Yep, 2 houses down. That's Bellatti's. There's Sowers, Bellatti's, and then Garris's.
That one's about 7 feet. With me going up or me going down?
Go up. One more.
Where you gotta find my hand here? There it is.
Garris's is that yellow house right there. What about their garage in the backyard? To
This-
the back.
this
yeah,
one?
in that one, yeah.
No, he's gonna be further than that away on both sides.
Okay.
That one's about 10 feet that way. Gotta go to the shadow lines. It's about 20 feet that way.
Right there.
Ken, the garage in back of that house just north of there, is that on the property line or is that off the property line?
North is up here?
Go east.
Go east.
No,
This one here?
Now go north.
Now go north.
That next house up there, is that?
No, no.
Okay, never mind.
This one's probably pretty close over here, but
How far did he say McCann's was? Behind us?
4 feet.
4 feet?
no, it's probably about 3 or 4 feet. But
And if you go ways to the south on the east side of the block, there's a couple that are right next to each other.
yeah, well, anyone else to speak?
Can I just say something?
Sure, you get come up. Just come up and state your name.
I'm Betty Adams. I'm Jason's mother. When Jason and Trish were looking to buy a home, last summer, it's incredibly hard to find a home that is quite handicapped accessible already. The kids were very fortunate in finding this home because it is kind of an open concept. The doorways are quite wide. There wasn't much to have to internally do to get that house prepared. They did put a lot of windows in that house to make it more efficient. And maybe I'm stepping out of line here, but I'm not so sure that the concern the neighbor has about not allowing that garage there is maybe because their yard has, in the fall of the year, we are dealing with the odors of dead geese, deer hides, and such. Now, for as handicapped as Jason is at this time, you go drive past their yard, and it is very well maintained. They have made an asset into this area of town by keeping that yard clean, updating that house with the windows. They're going to be siding that house, shingling in the future. My son doesn't know from day to day if he's going to be able to be vertical. And his parents are his only support group here in town. We can't go over there every time it snows to blow out the snow and to get him in and out of the house. He's independent. He's 38 years old. He has a family. They need their independence. I'm not asking for a fence removed and everything else. I think we need to make considerations for things that are totally out of our control. And this is a situation of such.
Thank you. Anyone else to speak on behalf or against the permit? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. Ask for a motion and a second for discussion. Motion by Mr. McGuire, second by Mr. Stonebarger. Any further discussion?
Normally I would be against something like this, but to accommodate a handicapped person, I'll vote for it.
You know, I look at it too. It's not a big garage. I mean, it's 24 by 28. We've seen lots bigger garages that are asking for a lot of room. This isn't a really big structure. To me, it does look like it's about the minimum size structure that they can make work. You know, there's a lot of people that in the same space would ask for a 40 by 36 in there, but because he needs that space to maneuver himself in a vehicle around, I think, you know, I'm with John. Normally we would say let's just set it back over, but I think the maneuverability in the future makes it awful tough for it to put it anywhere else on that lot. Any other discussion?
I think that would be a good reason to not go with the ordinance, even though I understand and I think we try to maintain them, but this makes sense to me.
Anything else? Seeing none, I'll ask for a vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Any old business? Ken?
I believe so.
Okay.
You stick around, otherwise you just come and see me in a day or two and we'll get this all taken care of. Okay? It's up to you guys. Yeah, they're asking for old business, yep. Yeah, please. I'll let you sit there. Oh, okay.
Ken leave?
I'm right here.
Oh. Oh.
The Leonards had asked to talk at this meeting.
Okay.
This is in regard to the Christensen
All right.
House issue.
All right, there's no public hearing or anything like this because it hasn't been public notice, but go ahead, state your name and
My name is Stephanie Leonards. We reside at 434 South Lake Drive in Watertown, and we were here for a hearing on September 22nd, 2016. We were in opposition to the boathouse that was being proposed, or the modification to what was being proposed by the Christensens, and this board unanimously voted in favor of the modifications. So I came to show you what's happened. I'm thankful you said yes to the Adams. That is a issue of hardship, and I think you nailed the nail on the head, John, when you said well, is there any hardship with this? Because there was not proved hardship in that prior variance that was brought up. It's unfortunate I didn't know what that was supposed to be proven, but that's South Dakota and Watertown law, that you are supposed to prove hardship if there is any variance approved to the ordinances established in Watertown. So therefore, I'm wondering how the Board of Adjustments gets around.
Can I talk on this?
Yeah. He'll explain it that the,
First of all, I need to clarify a little bit. The boathouse within itself is not dictated by the setbacks in the standard ordinance.
Okay.
A boathouse has 5 criteria that's within the ordinance, and those were looked at the time that we developed it. I think they're in here, even outlined within our. Yeah, they're right here. These are the 5 criteria, and none of those are with relation to a setback from the side yard or front yard or backyard or anything else. When you're looking at a boathouse, because it's a conditional use, it goes by this criteria. This is the criteria that the board looked at the time, and they arbitrarily said the proposed distance was 2 or 3 feet, and we set it to 8 foot for the building, and that's what they accepted. So there was not a variance. There was not a condition here where they had to prove hardship.
yeah, what happens with boathouses, they're kind of an oddity in the ordinance, because if they had to be set back from the front yard 25 feet, they couldn't be used as a boathouse. They'd be too far from the water. So it is kind of odd that we have a setback for all buildings except boathouses. And it's just more of, like Ken said, it's a conditional use to say, should it be allowed there or should it not be allowed? Does it make sense? If somebody in the city limits said, I want to put up a boathouse, we'd go, well, in town proper, it doesn't make sense. There's no water near their homes. So that's kind of how boathouses, and like we said, they're a conditional use. That one was existing, that was already there, and they were asking to make some significant modifications to it. So that's why the variance hardship doesn't actually apply in that case.
Well, there was still no hardship known. It was modifications that they wanted to be able to change that. So you are the board that grants this conditional use or variance. We had Pat Shriver out at our house. We also had Jason Hansen out at our house. I contacted Joan Stonebarger on the phone, and Dennis Arnold came out to our house. Pat and Jason both looked at Jason, my husband, and myself and said, we don't see how this can be done, because there would be too great of a height variance. And so we came to that meeting back then knowing that we'd talked to 2 people that basically said there's no way that this can happen because it doesn't meet number 2, amount of blockage of lake view to adjacent lots.
Can you show us the pictures of it? Do you have current pictures as to what you're talking about?
I sure do. I just want to get through some points. There's no other situation like this around the lake. So then Mr. McGuire, he was the one that moved that there should be an 8-foot conditional setback. And it was seconded by Joan Stonebarger. And so an 8-foot setback from the property line was established by the Board of Adjustments. On Easter of this year, which I'm not sure the date of that, we walked down and found what was happening down there. I photographed this entire project as it has happened. I don't know how to project these pictures up.
Just set it right here, and he'll zoom in from the overhead camera, and then you can slide it around it a little bit if you need to. Yep, there we go. You can.
This is the structure right here that was allowed to be 8 feet from the property line. And this is our property over here. These are footings poured for stairs that are well within that 8 feet. This is a deck sitting down, not at grade level, that's completely attached to the cement structure that is a part of this, and I've got other photos as well. And then this is a retaining wall that's well within the 4 feet.
8 feet.
I'm sorry, well within the 8 feet. Here's our property line. During the project, the contractor had to dig into here in order to have enough room to establish the footings for what's going on down here, for this cement that's basically just off of the property line. And we came down and found a 2x4 wedged in between our tree that's right over here and what was holding up this cement, the frame that was holding up that footing. And that was wedged in on our property line, as well as 2 sprinkler heads that were damaged and turned sideways down in this area. All of this was dug up this last winter. On April 19th, I contacted Keith Dolan. Actually, April 18th, I contacted Keith Dolan, who then was in touch with Ken. And the next morning, they were out looking at this project. I called to follow up with this. I have a recorded voicemail from Ken talking about this has to get looked at and we have to see how the landscaping and the fill come in for this project to see how the final project is done. As far as I'm concerned, the fill and the landscaping have nothing to do with an 8-foot setback established by this board.
How far is how far is the sidewall from the property line right now?
This
Yep,
is
that's what we go. That's what we go off of.
according to the letter that we got, 8 feet 3 inches.
And we agreed that the old building was 6 feet, correct?
I don't know.
The old building was 6, Ken,
It
and we
doesn't
asked them
matter.
to
This is
slide it
what was
over,
ruled.
and we agreed to slide it over 8 feet.
I think it was actually less than that.
The old
It was
building
down about
was.
3 feet.
Doesn't matter.
But,
It does matter.
just FYI.
We said 8 feet. It's 8 feet 3 inches.
Yeah, and these steps and all this foundation, this part, that's not the structure. This
No.
is the structure. Yes, ma'am.
The
No.
structure is based off the outside wall.
This is based on my,
I'm going to show you the rest of the structure.
no, but that doesn't matter.
This is the lake view part of what was just completed.
Yep, I don't disagree one bit.
Let me talk.
I'm sorry.
There is, I don't know how you can separate and say that this is not part of the structure when there's cement directly connecting. This is all one unit. And it comes out within that 8-foot setback. How is that? It's not at grade level, and it won't be at grade level. I have a side view.
That could be considered a seawall, protecting his property.
And now may I speak?
No, I'm not done yet.
Okay.
Okay, Ken, I want to hear what Ken has to say first. Then we'll let you continue.
Here's the plan that came to the Board of Adjustment. At the time the Board of Adjustment made their final determination at 1 minute 12, 1 hour, no, it was 1.12, no, it's 1. I went and listened to the whole thing again today.
I did too.
Our final determination was that the building should remain 8 foot from the property line. This is the building. This is the diagram that's shown. This is all the other appurtenances, but none of this is considered the building. And it is the building official's final determination as to how this is interpreted based on this thing in our ordinance and in state law of codes. That was never construed. This is as it was shown, and this is the part. This is the part that was determined to be 8 foot from the property line. It is now 8 foot 3. Our ordinance specifically excludes steps and stairs and landscaping.
Again, then how is this part here separated from where the stairs are?
I'll let our attorney speak on that as to what precedents we have and how we measure setbacks.
This is all one terrace. It's all connected right there.
And this is exactly how it was shown on the plans that was
There's a
submitted
line
to
right
us.
there.
This is the project. This is the building. This is the wall. This is the portion that we said at the meeting would be 8 feet from your property line. knowing fair well
Which
that the
one?
deck.
Which portion?
No,
I-
right here,
I-
the building.
I guess I
Hey,
would.
Ken,
I
would just
we'll let Justin come in,
ask-
because what happens is, as to, by code, how we do things are all in that code. And how, where we're measured from, and what precedents we have, and when we say the sidewall will be this far, when we measure the setbacks, we're measuring to the nearest sidewall.
So there are two authorities at play here. The first is that the condition in the conditional use permit was explicitly 8 feet from the lot line to the building wall, that there needed to be that space to the building. Now, no
You
other
said to the structure. Did you use the term building or structure?
Building.
building.
Where is it?
I can bring it up and play it for you if you'd like.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll do that.
So, with that being the term, if you will, because no other setback provision otherwise applies according to ordinance, given that it is a boathouse, then the question is whether these other items associated with, as Ken called them, appurtenances, are a part of the building. And based upon Ken's interpretation, which is also supported by other ordinances, which we supplied, excuse me, in the letter that Ken had signed, there are, again, when we talk about obstructions, that would be what would be, if anything outside our conditional use permit, what would apply. And Ken has provided the rationale here of how the steps, the deck, the walls are all considered permitted obstructions in all yards. So let's say that this was not approved in the manner that Ken said, where the city or the commission said 8 feet for the building, right? And then looking at the plans, everything within the plans, all the appurtenances were to be built as depicted in the specifications, and those appeared to be followed. You can view that as making that entire development okay on those grounds. Or you can look to ordinance in the way that Ken had provided in this letter. Those are two lines of logic, both of which, excuse me, provide support for the construction as it sets right now being lawful. Obviously, Ken remarked on the deck or the terrace might be but again, that's with one line of logic. The other line of logic still supports the boathouse as it sets right now being completely within the confines of the conditional use permit.
So then I want to do you have a copy of the letter that I was sent?
Yes.
Do you all have a copy of the letter that I was sent?
No.
Would you like to hear that questionable paragraph that is in question? It says, it is a closer issue regarding whether the wraparound landing from the southwest facing stairs to the lower level door of the boathouse is a terrace and thus a permitted obstruction, or a deck and thus in violation of the conditional use. A contractor's distinction between a terrace and a deck is that the former is generally at grade, while the latter is substantially and structurally raised. In between those common definitions is a substantial gray area. To address that, the distinction employed by the city is one based on measurement. Our city building code requires that all steps have a maximum height of 8 inches.
Mm-hmm.
See revised ordinance, and there's an ordinance stated there. Therefore, if the clearance between the ground and the platform is greater than 8 inches, it is a deck. It would require at least 2 steps from grade. While if it is 8 inches or less, it is a terrace. Until construction is finished, we cannot ascertain where the landing is a deck or a terrace. Note, however, the contractor for the boathouse has been placed on notice by the city regarding this potential violation. A very convenient notice to the contractor to be in compliance. Now
But
again,
Actually,
to that point is why I went through and listened to the minutes today.
Mhm.
The exact meeting that we had, and it is clearly specified that the dimension of 8 foot was to the building.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
And
So
the
let's go
building-
back and talk about the terrace then, Ken.
No,
Can
it's
we,
not a terrace. It's-
hey,
it's
time
an
out,
Yeah,
time
yeah.
out, time out. Hey guys, time out. This is an old business, not public hearing. Let's take this, I'd like to get some more information as far as, we don't have copies of the letters, we haven't seen it. Can you get copies of those letters? And Mrs. Leonard, can you get us your specific objections as to what's going on and what your recommendations are so we can take a look at it between now and our next meeting?
Sure.
I mean, to be fair, I'd like to see both sides. As coming in, I heard, well, they're having some problems. I said, my assumption
Coming
is
into this meeting, you found out?
no, I just heard that I was asked if I would
When?
allow you to speak yesterday.
But when did you first find out?
Yesterday.
Yesterday?
Yeah, I was asked if we would allow you to come back to this meeting.
When did you
Am I
first find
okay?
out about the,
It's 8:30 last night.
about our conflict with this?
No,
Oh, when did you
I-
first find out about the conflict with this?
when I assumed there was a conflict when they asked if I cared if you came to this meeting and spoke in the old business. Otherwise, I have to public hearing this and you couldn't have come for another month.
Right, but I have a voicemail from Jason Hansen saying that he talked to Ken Buchholz and you're both aware of the situation.
He mentioned that there may be something going on. I have no idea.
So last night's the first night you.
Mr. Albertson called me and said, Pat, would you mind if Stephanie came to and
But I
talked
have
in
a
old business? I
voicemail
said, go
saying
ahead.
that you and both Ken were made aware of this.
I get calls all day, every day on this. Somebody calls me and goes, the Leonards have a little problem with their property. And I said, well, let's bring it to us and let's find out. It's not a big deal. Why don't you get us your issues? Ken, you get us the background on it so we can look at it. It's pretty hard for us I don't know what decision you want us to make when we're not in a public hearing. We can't make any decisions.
Okay.
That's right.
I was curious as to what the process or how the project was going. I have no idea whether that home has been set. Dennis just told me it gets set tomorrow. I have no idea on that.
Okay.
You get us your information. If you want help from us, we're going to need help from you.
Okay. I also want to point out in this picture, this was from a reunion on 9/23 of 17, that we have Ken Buchholz and Craig Christensen standing right next to each other. That
That's
was
fine.
the
That's
day after the
we're not
meeting.
going to get into people not getting along with each
I just wonder
other.
how decisions get made when
Uh,
we had two people
yeah.
up there saying there's no way this can happen, and then we came and got blindsided at that
No,
meeting.
Not at all. Why don't you
Especially
get
with
us your
you had
information?
Stating in the hearing, because I listened to that
Right.
too, that we consider height, we really look at height.
Yeah, that's why the building was moved over 4 or 5 feet. That's
Okay.
where, if you want to know for the record, what I thought is, yes, the house is up so high. Well, if we move that thing over, it's further, you have far less obstruction in there. That was the trade-off I saw when I made my vote, was because that home was moved, because that boathouse was moved further away from your property line, it was offset by the height. My feelings. Now, if you want to bring information back to us and want us to objectively look at it, feel free. I'd like to get some more information so we can take an objective look at it.
This
Can I get a
def-
motion to adjourn? Motion by Mr. Albertson, second by Mr. Stoneberg. All in favor, say aye. Motion carries. Give 'em money. If we can throw my ass on it. All right, Ken, you ready to open up the SignCode Board of Appeals?
Yep, roll call.
All right.
Stein, absent. Dolly, absent. Arnold? Here. Shriver?
Here.
Stonebarger? Here. Hanson?
Here.
McGuire? Here. Albertson. We have a quorum.
First, First item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes from October 20th, 2016. Can I get a motion second? Motion by Mr. Stonebarger, second by Mr. Hanson. All in favor say aye. Opposed, motion carries. Item number 2, professional landscaping and lawn. Sign permit number 1506 appeals the following requirements for a sign located at 2410 14th Avenue Southeast.
Right, thank you. Again, Professional Landscaping has made a request. They are in the I-1 zone district. The current I-1 zone district requires a sign to be placed 10 foot from the property line. Mr. Meidinger, I'm sorry, I apologize, has is requesting to put the sign at the property line on this side of the entrance so that it wouldn't be blocked by the trees and other fencing that he has planted there, so. Ray, give me the overhead, would you please? Okay. This shows the 14th Avenue course and the entrance in. He'd be 15 feet over out of the clear vial triangle, and he proposes to set a sign that parallels the property line at that point. The sign would look like this. Was public notice. All public notice requirements have came back. Nobody has voiced opinion pro or con. Mr. Meidinger is here for questions if you have them.
Ken, right now there's at least one more row of trees here than what this picture shows, right?
Let's see here if I can get a more current picture here. Won't be a clearer picture, but it'll be more current.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, it's kind of it's a blurry picture, but yeah.
I noticed that he's he's in the business, but he's one of the only property owners that put trees on the property or boulevard as they're required to, so I would hate to see him cut a tree down.
Yep, you can just leave it on.
I'm Mike.
State your name.
Mike Meidinger. I own the property. And we planted the trees as a windbreak because it's really windy and we have trees and shrubs out there for our jobs. So we wanted a windbreak, not knowing that we needed a sign. But we got a lot of neighbors and really nobody has signs. So we're getting trucks driving through all these guys to find the guys they need. So I would like to put a sign up there that way. I like it facing that way so I don't have to double side the sign. It's cheaper to put one side on the sign than two sides. And if I move it, like say to the corner, then they don't know where my driveway is or what's what. So it kind of just has to go that way. We can't put nothing on the building because you can't see it from the road. And it's a monument sign. It's only going to be, I don't remember what the drawing was, 6 feet high or 7 feet high or something at the top. So it's not a big obnoxious sign. It's just showing where I'm at, my name.
It's 8 foot 6 inches.
How wide's the right of way there, Ken?
It's supposed to be 10 feet back from the lot line, is that correct?
That's correct.
And what we're asking for is to put it up on the lot line?
Correct.
And we've talked about this a little bit in the industrial zone before.
Yeah, this is real similar. This is an 80 foot right away, just for your past question. We had a very similar request for Mr. Andy Wicks. If I can find my hand again. Who is just down to the corner here a little bit. Andy's property is right here, and then he made the same request to us in October of 2015 and was granted at the time. It was even brought up at that time that we might want to consider changing that I-1 setback from 10 to 0, but nothing has come forward from that at that time.
At the time when Andy sent out all the letters, I talked with the guy on the corner. I don't remember his name, but he sells fire extinguishers and
LaFramboise across the road.
LaFramboise across. We all came to that meeting because we kind of wanted it changed because if anybody puts up signs, we're all kind of in the same boat, and nobody had any issues with it. They all agreed that, yeah, we all got to put signs somewhere right on. The 10-foot setback is the problem that I have with it. I don't have a problem keeping it on my property. I just don't have that 10 feet to do it, I guess.
Ken, would you point, where's your building at? Ken, would you point to that again?
Yeah. Here's the building right here.
Okay, and the driveway is the white line going up to the,
Yeah, this
right
is
there?
the driveway here, and it comes over to access here.
For the record, Ken, I do have
And the driveway's on your
public hearing
property,
open.
and the sign's gonna go, is proposed to go where?
Yeah, his building is about almost 200 feet back from the from property line, but he's.
From that little white
this isn't
spot
it.
there?
It's actually gonna go 15
Where the white
feet off
spot,
the
white
side.
square is there?
Pretty close to the white spot, but it'd be west of there a little bit yet too.
What's on the other driveway though, isn't it?
So it wouldn't create a clear view triangle issue.
Mike, the only people that use your driveway, that's you. Nobody else uses it, so you're not
Other than deliveries.
obstructing anybody's view coming out. I could
Correct,
see
no, that's my,
coming
that's only
out,
my
you-
driveway.
Yeah, you kind of bait yourself there because you wouldn't be able to see very well going to the
If you
left.
actually go out there and drive up and down, I mean, you can
Yeah.
see a lot. And we don't, I mean, we don't come out of there at 50 miles an hour either. You stop and you go because they're coming, I mean, there's a lot of traffic on them roads. You really would be surprised how many trucks are on that road. So, I mean, everybody, you yield, you know, I mean, it's just.
Ken, can you measure from the sign to the curb?
Sure.
Because it does look like we got a wide right-of-way, and you're probably, 20 feet is 22 feet's a four-door truck. So if he goes from that curb edge to the front of his sign, I bet you we're 20-plus feet.
I'm gonna go back to the other picture just for a second because it's I can better define here for me.
Because that would be our concern, is if we don't want it to obstruct view. We don't want you pulling out in front of somebody.
So from the back, it's 20 feet from the back of the curb to the edge of the property line.
Okay, so that's almost a full-length truck from where the sign would be to where the edge of the curb. So if he was pulling up to pull out of there.
For safety.
Yeah, from a safety standpoint, is he'd pull by his sign almost 10 feet before he looks left and right. Sound right? Unless the road ever gets widened, which more than likely not back there. Anyone else to speak in the public hearing or have a question for Mr. Meidinger? With that, I'll close the public hearing, ask for a motion and a second for discussion. Motion by Mr. Arnold, second by Mr. Stonebarger. Any concerns or questions? Let's revisit that setback for signs in that industrial zone. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries.
Nothing for the old.
Well, if that were well.
Now,
Minutes for the sign.
okay, I need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Stoneberg, second by Mr. Arnold. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
SignCode Board of Appeals adjourned.
That was pretty picky.
Yeah. All right, Brandy, you ready?
Yep.
Looks like I have some counsel on that side of the seat. Counsel. I'd like to call to order the Thursday, May 4th, Plan Commission meeting. Roll call, please.
Arnold. Shriver.
Here.
Stoneberger.
Here.
Hanson.
Here.
McGuire. Albertson. And Stein and Dolly are absent.
First item on the agenda is the approval of the agenda. Could I get a motion in a second? Motion by Mr. McGuire, second by Mr. Stonebarger. All in favor say aye. Opposed, motion carries. Second item is the approval of the minutes from April 20th, 2017. Motion by Mr. Stonebarger. Second by Mr. Arnold. All in favor say aye. Opposed, motion carries. Item number 3 is a resolution amending the parking of vehicles prohibited and outside storage parking in the residential uses of the revised ordinance of the City of Watertown. Justin?
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman. I often make these titles a mouthful, and this is no exception here. But it's for a good cause, I think. The genesis of this ordinance amendment request came from some statements that Mr. Buchholz made at a city council work session here maybe a month or so back, talking about commercial trailers and contractors' trailers and how at certain points they can be in violation of the letter of the law with regard to certain parking regulations within the City of Watertown. Well, if they were to be enforced, they wouldn't be able to conduct their business in some instances. And so the thought was that the internal policy, the city police force's policy of providing some consideration for those types of trailers, the thought was that should be codified in our ordinances. And then in the process of doing that, looking at our ordinances, I came to discover a slight incongruity that I hope to have revised in these ordinances here. And really it kind of gets down to this may be the first time you've seen a Title 18 ordinance before you. And the only reason why I wanted to package those two ordinances together was because of the shared nature of needing to address the police power side, the right-of-way, the moving violation concern, as well as the on-premise concerns that are more within the realm of zoning. So my memo goes into explaining why these revisions have been made, but I'll just briefly touch on a few. As I mentioned, these changes are driven in part.
Did you say briefly?
Yes.
Oh.
I know that's a bridge too far with me usually. No exception here. But as you can see in 180101 sub 2, commercial trailers are exempted. You see in sub 3 a reference to vehicles over 1 ton and the ability to unload personal property from semi-trailers as exempted from the normal prohibition on semi-trailers being able to be parked in residential areas. That language reflects language that was placed into section 216501, but given that it was in zoning ordinance and referred to regulations that impacted rights of way, essentially our police powers, I figured that was better placed in 180101 since the ability for Ken as the building official, the Board of Adjustment as the ultimate appeal body to enforce that would be difficult. So if you have any other questions, that's basically what we're trying to do here, is to incorporate that policy into ordinance and to make sure that the zoning equivalent regulates what can be regulated through zoning ordinance.
Yes, I have a question. So you're saying no semi or trailer or whatever over 1 ton. What about roll-offs? No, that can be exempt from this, or?
So you might have to explain to me what roll-offs are precisely. I'm not
That's
terrible.
that big garbage bin they put in the street and they throw all the.
Oh. So dumpsters, basically.
Well, it rolls off of a semi-trailer and they park it there until it's full.
Sure.
And they pick it up and take it away.
As it stands right now, I'd have to look to see if there are any other provisions in law, but I can't imagine those would way greater than a ton? Is that possible?
Probably not empty,
Empty,
but then
yeah.
full they probably do, so what are your interpretation,
Sure.
Mr.
I would like to
Stonebarger?
interpret this, that you could allow those.
Mr.
Well-
Stonebarger, we just recently have implemented a new policy in our permits that, and fees rates set by the council. Roll-off dumpsters can be allowed on public right-of-way with a permit. They are restricted without a permit.
I had one question on it, Justin. On number 2 under off-street parking, my first question is what if somebody just leaves a trailer there and says, I'm building the house, I'm working the house, the time side of that. But I do say it says, with exception of commercial vehicles and trailers used by contractors actively. You're comfortable with the word actively, that if, we don't want to make an ordinance that's trying to more exception than rule, but you're comfortable with the word actively if somebody says that project's been going on for 2 years and that thing's been sitting there. That's the kind of things we hear. You're comfortable that if the word actively would give Ken or anyone else enough authority to go over and say, you know, your building permit's expired or whatever maybe.
That's a very good question, Mr. Chairman. We actually went back and forth in terms of what that precise language should be. There was a thought about daily, but the worry there was contractor's vehicle set or a contractor's trailer setting over the weekend. That would not be exempted under the plain letter of the law, whereas actively would reasonably encompass what you would consider to be, somebody diligently working on a project. And then also you have the added safety valve of the trailer can't otherwise pose a threat to public safety where it's located. So, within the view shed triangles, view triangles, however you want to call them, things of that nature.
Clear view triangles.
That's the language I'm thinking of. Yep.
Got it.
Could you maybe have something with that the permit has to be active? Could you have something with a permit?
Well,
If the permit's expired and they're actively working.
Right, because your building permit, correct me if I'm wrong, is 1 year and then it can be renewed for 1 year.
But to that degree, I mean, shingle jobs, siding jobs, or maintenance, and don't require a permit. So somebody could easily be there a week re-shingling a house or re-siding a house or something like that.
That goes
And
back
a
to
permit's not
actively.
required, so if you tie it to the permit, then they're going to be in violations. It's, we drive by or we're going to get a complaint, if the trailer's sitting there a week later and we know the job's done because we got to go and final the house or everything ourselves anyway, it's time to move it along, or if not, we'll get the police and you get cited. So
I mean, I would just add to this discussion from a legal standpoint, the concern here about wording that you're kind of getting at is vagueness. And the question is whether the language there wouldn't be understood by a reasonable person to mean something, specific or relatively specific. So a reasonable person would, I think, understand where an active work site is versus an inactive or a work site that's been, occupied with this trailer for 2 years for a small job or a medium-sized job. I mean, that would not meet a reasonable person's definition of active. So, I mean, that's one extreme example, but there are other examples, less extreme, where that language would be sufficient.
Along with the roll-offs, is there anything in there about them storage pods that they set down for when you're moving?
I'll speak on that, but currently the storage pods, remember when Mike first brought those to us? He asked for it, and then we determined at that time that, we're just going to leave it alone until they present a problem to us. So currently, nobody's been in with a problem yet, so we don't actually regulate them right at the moment.
Because they're really
Other
not.
than if they get set in the street or anything else. But as long as they're in their driveway or on their own private property.
They're not a licensed vehicle or anything.
It's not a licensed vehicle. We kind of leave them alone. So that's currently what it is, and nothing that he's proposed in the new one would have any difference to that yet.
Dennis, this makes
Dumpster.
sense to you?
There's a separate part of the ordinance that handles dumpsters and construction materials being left on the street, so we do that by permit, by a different process, yeah.
Dennis, as a contractor, you can live with this. This makes sense.
Yeah,
It makes.
and if you think about the way it has been, I guess many of us have been in violation of that if we're working on a project in town without doing what you're doing today. Because you don't pull your trailer off the street every night when you're done working. You're going to be back at 7 in the morning again. So I think it's a good thing, Dan. Yeah. Yeah, I have a question on jumping down to number 10,
Mhm.
unless you want to work your way down
Oh,
to,
no,
to
absolutely.
that.
We can touch on that.
Just explain to me what you're saying there,
Sure.
or why you eliminated that.
So when we talk about on-street concerns, we're talking about rights-of-way. And I don't know when the last time it was that this body had to deal with anything concerning rights-of-way. But generally speaking, if you look at the way our ordinances are structured, concerns about rights-of-way, be it traffic or what's cited in them, utilities and whatnot, those all exist, the regulations all exist outside of Title 21. Because generally speaking, concerns about right-of-way aren't zoning concerns, regulating the use of the right-of-way, etc. So, you know, when the question is on-street parking is prohibited except for daily use vehicles, generally speaking, that would be a ticket. That would be a ticketable offense. Like under 180101, there would be within our uniform citations for parking. That would be a box for the police department to check and then place on the windshield, right? Well, the way zoning ordinance is generally enforced is a formal complaint is written. So a sheet of paper saying complaint, this is the violation, and you need to appear on this violation. So, I mean, there's a combination of the enforcement ability in law fundamentally for this body to be able to, you know, to prescribe this prohibition. Then there's the practical concern of, you know, these parking tickets are generally handled as tickets. These parking violations are generally handled as tickets, not as, you know, formal complaints. You need to come into court for an initial appearance and all that.
I think once this is approved as it goes through the city council and is finalized, it'd be a good idea, I think, to send this out to all the contractors in town so they're aware of this, and also even the dumpsters, because I'm sure a lot of people are not aware of that, you know, you see it happen all over, that they're demoing somebody's living room and they'll pull a dumpster up and fill it that day and it'll go out that night, but it's not a licensed vehicle, and if they need a permit for that, you know, it'd be nice to let them know that.
Any other questions for Justin? Seeing none, I'll ask for a motion in a second to approve, and then you want a motion second, approval, and then it goes city council, correct?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Motion by Mr. Stonebarger,
Second.
second by Mr. Albertson. Any other discussion on it? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. I see no old business, but there's a little bit of new business on in regard to the April 25th, 2017 Park Board meeting. What did you say?
Briefly?
I'll be brief.
Yeah, Pat, you can take that over. But that last second, was it Hanson? Albertson? Oh, hi.
Can you pull up those two plats? What I talked to Brandy.
Brandy. Dan can't vote on the planning commission, sorry.
So I need a different. I'll redo that. We'll recant that. I have a motion by Mr. Stonebarger, second by Mr. McGuire.
You seem so sure. I want.
Can't double vote. Thanks for the effort. At the park board meeting last week, two plats were brought before the park board. One was what we've referred to as the J&J edition up around the old tree farm, and the other one was the Hofteaser edition, or River Ridge north of that. What was discussed was park dedication. I'll go over the J&J first. Originally, when J&J came to us, we weren't when we saw that plat, it didn't jump out at us as something we really liked, because they dedicated park on 14th Avenue, and we looked at the slope of that park and the length and thought it looks like a sled hill going into a pond. In hindsight, when we came to the park board thought the exact same thing as the plan commission did. As the developer talked to us more onto it, he said what he'd like to do is give us that piece that he said, and then he agreed to put a bike trail. And if you can show him, the bike trail went all the way to the north, came back. He's basically going to put a bike trail around all 320 some lots. It will come all the way across And that little piece to the north, they're going to give us that as park dedication also. It's a lower area, kind of a stormwater area, but it is bridged in between the two developments, and we thought, well, that would be a decent enough place where we could put, it's kind of a walk-to park because of the way the roads are, but it's something for where you could put swing sets and for more smaller children. Did he agree to bring that bike trail all the way over to Second? So he's going to bring it all the way over to Second. I don't think he was participating in going south on Second, was he?
No. His proposal had a 10-foot wide sidewalk style bike trail segment from Grant to Second Street.
And as we looked at it further, as the park board talked it through, if you can go back down to that southern piece, we still weren't really that sold on it. But then we said, 14th Avenue, it's a busy street. There's kids. There's not a lot of parking. He's going to grade the what would that be, the east end of it. He's going to grade that for parking. And as we talked more, we said what that would really work out nice for is a trailhead for our bike trail, where we can put some mechanic station in there. There'll be parking in there. If somebody's coming, they could start there, jump on the bike trail and go all the way out to the lake and back, or it's halfway up the hill coming from the lake. So we kind of looked and said, as that concept worked out, a nice park on 14th with a trailhead to the bike trail, a walking, basically a bike trail, walking trail around the whole development, plus he was going to give us some land on the north side of it. The park board bid on it and said, conceptually it looks pretty nice. So they accepted that as park dedication. And then if you go up to the River Ridge side,
Pat, I have one
go ahead.
question. This walk-to park on the north?
Right there.
Is that just like a walk-to park from the J&J construction, or is it also going to be somehow accessible from off-teasers?
There's a little green part right there. That's a sidewalk that goes in off the road, so anybody from any of those areas can access it. Up on the north, the bike trail actually goes across it.
So the sidewalk along, well, it's Missouri Drive, but it won't be ultimately called Missouri Drive, and Grant Drive, they would be connected via sidewalk to the north to 20th Avenue in the Hoff-Teaser development. So those sidewalk segments would be the connectivity from the north.
And if you
who would take care of that? Who would take care of those bike trails? Or, they're going to be good for the first 5 years, and they'll have snow on them. And the mayor has suggested maybe taking a little bit closer look at the bike trails that we have as far as trying to keep them clean during the winter time. And would this be Northridge then that would take care of it, or?
I'm assuming he would dedicate that bike trail to the city.
Yeah. So
Then it become part of our big trail. That is a big problem with Park and Rec, is that is a big trail, and to get to adequately broom it and keep it clean of debris and then repair it, it's quite a budget.
It's one of the things we're struggling with now is trying to finish the bike trail by the lake, and yet there are other parts that need to be worked on.
Maintained.
And you got money to do this, but then maybe you don't have money to do, you can't fix it and build new with the same dollars. So I just was curious as to who's going to take over that responsibility, but I think Shane said it.
And now go ahead, Dennis.
Well, Dan, you mentioned this and that kind of asked a question, and I don't know if you got all of your answer, but Pat, what is the thoughts on the trails? I mean, people love to walk and they use these bike trails, and they need exercise in the winter, spring, winter, fall, just as much as the summer. But yet in the winter, they're all snowed over and nothing's ever done with them. Has that ever been a point of discussion?
I'll get some information from Park and Rec at our next meeting on those. But now Shane can tell us. We're 3 miles short of having it completely connected around Lake Kempeska, right? In the Reader's Digest version, the city sets $175,000-ish a year away to go into these bike trails. There's a fund there that's being used to complete the bike trails. There's quite a bit of engineering that goes in. This last 3 miles has a lot of engineering issues with it because of slope and where it's at. Shane's department is actively working on that to make sure that we get that finished with the funds that are in there, but it's more of an engineering issue.
Yeah, the idea is Park and Rec, along with the engineering department, are preparing a RFP, request for proposals, from an engineering company to help us identify the obstacles and design a trail that would overcome those obstacles to complete that bike trail around the west and south end of the lake.
It's a tricky thing. There's parts of the bike trail that, if, for instance, that if the bike trail is used, if the shoulder of the road is used as a bike trail versus separate, funding's different for things like that. So there's a lot of variables that go into it. So, can you pull up the River Ridge one? The River Ridge development started years back. Kind of gone back and forth on this one as to where was the park that was dedicated? Was it going to be an HOA style park? Who was going to maintain it? In the end, basically they went back from scratch and said this 8.6-ish acres on this north, it's 26th Street, it abuts 26th Street. The park board said, they gave us a couple options and we chose this option. Said we'll take that 8+ acres up on the north edge of their development. 26th Street, if you ever go up there, is going to be a large, it's a connector street for us someday up there. There's buildable land to the north into the east there that someday maybe home developments up there, but they've agreed, the park board has requested this 8 acres up there. Haven't really decided what they're going to do with it yet. They could use some of it as a tree nursery. They can put, depending on how it develops up there, they'll have access for a large plot of land to make a destination style park for some people. This is just a couple ball fields, things like that. That was just scoped in there. We wouldn't expect to have ball fields in there, but we would expect to have, a destination style park up there. And 26th Street, if you drive up there, that's the old North Bypass Road. That's where the bypass was going to go through there, but it'll be a connector someday, maybe not our lifetime, but so they've agreed, and if we accept this and they agree to that 8.6 acres, that satisfies their 5% park dedication in River Ridge. So that's the update on parks. Any questions?
Just a point, where the bike trail stops at Hidden Valley at Pompesca Drive, from there all the way down to the water tower on South Lake Drive where it turns to the west again, South Lake Drive was put way south of the right-of-way. The official right-of-way is, most of it's north of the actual road, the original right-of-way. And then when it goes south, the same thing has happened, because the original plat had South Lake Drive going clear to the west a little further and straight south. So there's a lot of room on the north side and the west side of South Lake Drive, which gets you clear down to the water tower. Then you probably have to jump to the south side there to go any further. But
anything else in new business, Brandy?
I was gonna check. I know I got a hold of a couple of you yesterday about possibly entertaining a special meeting on May 25th over noon. And the reasoning for that is our next meeting is May 18th, and then because of the Memorial Day holiday, then we go 3 weeks in between Plan Commission meetings, and we have 2 preliminary plans that would like to be heard, I guess, and not lose the 3 weeks during building season.
And
so
you're going to have a design review team meeting on both of those, so it'd be nice if we could hash most of that out. If we can get those developers in 3 weeks early in the summer, that's a lot of time that they can make hay. But she asked me, and I said I'd rather do it at noon. It's the Thursday before Memorial Day, and come.
yeah, I think we might be gone.
Yeah. But hopefully the design review team will have that hammered out pretty good before it gets to us.
And actually, it's the 2 developments we just discussed.
Okay.
But so that'll be the detail. We'll bring it digested if that's what you desire. My only question is chicken, pizza, or subs?
Subs.
Subs. Dagwoods do fine for you. Okay.
all right, so you're all in.
All right. No other new business, no executive session. Can I get a motion to adjourn? Motion by Mr. Arnold. Second by Mr. Hanson. All in favor say aye. Opposed, motion carries.
One fine stone is polished with pink and fighting dark hue.